wonder, why does staff want him to hide away? Are they afraid that people will see that he is too weak and
Oh yes, one must wonder, Josh. One must wonder. Such a bizarre line. I don't know if it's going to work with the undecided voters, but it's hard to think of a candidate that's more out there than Donald Trump. He's everywhere. He's on every podcast. He's doing every interview. He's doing press conferences at takeaway shops. Like he's just questioned and talking every day.
Yeah, I believe that this is what psychiatrists call projection. You know, I didn't study psychiatry in law school or in grad school or whatever, but I mean, this is a clear and obvious case of psychiatric or psychological projection. It's not. Kamala Harris is the one who only recently started to change her media strategy a little bit. But by the way, don't call it a media blitz because she's just doing left-wing echo chamber interviews. Although albeit this week, she's changing it a little bit. She actually just announced she's doing a sit-down interview with Brett Baer of Fox News. Apparently, the latest scuttlebutt is that she's also considering a potentially 3-hour-long sit-down with Joe Rogan, the very popular Austin, Texas-based podcaster. I can't imagine how bad her internal polling is that she's agreeing to a sit-down interview with Brett Baer of Fox News and potentially 3 hours. God help us if we actually sit through those full 3 hours with Joe Rogan. Kamala Harris is not in good shape. I mean, this has all of the indications of a campaign that is currently going down the toilet. She is losing momentum at the exact worst time possible. All of the polling is shifting Donald Trump's way right now.
Kamala Harris might be preparing for what could be the most unexpected move of her political career. A potential appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. Yes, Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, might actually sit down across from Joe Rogan, the podcast legend who's more known for talking about elk meat and DMT than the inner workings of Washington. And guess what? The internet can't stop laughing. People are already betting on how many times Joe Rogan will have to steer the conversation away from policy and back to, well, you know, aliens. So why would Kamala Harris even consider going on the Joe Rogan Experience? Does she seriously believe that a few hours of unscripted conversation with Joe Rogan will magically fix her disconnect with the public? More importantly, what could possibly go wrong? Today, we're breaking down all the reasons why Kamala Harris might be eyeing this interview and why the internet is losing its mind over this strange pairing. Could this be the strategic move she desperately needs heading into the 2024 election? Or is this just another desperate attempt to seem relatable? Let's get one thing straight. Kamala Harris isn't exactly stepping into a battlefield. Some people are acting like Joe Rogan is going to roast her alive, but let's not get carried away. Joe Rogan has hosted some of the world's biggest names, from Mark Zuckerberg to Elon Musk, and none of them walked away bruised and battered. In fact, Joe Rogan is probably the least dangerous interviewer Harris will face this election cycle. Kamala Harris could come out of this talking about UFOs and the multiverse, and it would still be a win for her campaign simply because it's not your standard stale political interview. The reality is, Kamala Harris's team has reportedly been in discussions with Joe Rogan people to set up this potential interview. And why wouldn't they? The Joe Rogan Experience is the largest podcast in the world with millions of devoted listeners. It's a completely different world from the newsrooms of CNN and Fox. The Joe Rogan Experience isn't about sound bites or pre-approved talking points. No, Joe Rogan gives his guests time, lots of it, to talk about anything and everything. For Kamala Harris, who's struggled to connect with certain voter demographics, really young men, this is a gold mine of opportunity. But let's not pretend Kamala Harris is walking into the Joe Rogan Experience thinking she's going to convert the libertarian crowd. That's not happening. The people who watch Joe Rogan religiously aren't exactly lining up to cast their votes for Kamala Harris. And her team knows this. This isn't about winning over Joe Rogan's audience. It's about Kamala Harris showing up in a space that no one expects her to be in. A place where she can drop the overly scripted politician act and try to come across as a little more real, a little less robotic. But some people are acting like this is a massive risk for Kamala Harris. Seriously? Joe Rogan isn't out to humiliate her. If anything, this will be one of the easiest conversations she'll have on her campaign trail. The Joe Rogan Experience is long, sure, but it's hardly dangerous territory. He's had everyone from tech CEOs to comedians, and he's never made it his mission to take them down. So, no, Kamala Harris isn't about to get blindsided. In fact, this might be the first time in her political career where she can actually let loose a little bit and not have to dodge every single question with a carefully rehearsed response. And let's face it, Kamala Harris talking about something completely off the wall like aliens or psychedelics might actually be the best thing that happens to her. Imagine her sitting there diving into a discussion on intergalactic diplomacy while Joe Rogan throws out theories about life on other planets. The memes would be endless. And honestly, if her team is smart, they'll encourage her to lean into this weirdness. It's not like the mainstream media has done her any favors when it comes to making her seem relatable. Joe Rogan format could do for Kamala Harris what 100 speeches and 10 town halls never could. Still, there are those who think Joe Rogan is going to ambush her with tough questions. But let's be real. Joe Rogan doesn't do gotcha journalism. He's about the conversation, letting it flow naturally, and getting interesting insights from his guests. He didn't press Zuckerberg about Facebook's controversies, and he didn't grill Elon Musk about Tesla's problems. Joe Rogan isn't going to turn into a debate moderator when Kamala Harris shows up. If anything, this is going to be one of those interviews where Kamala Harris gets to control the narrative, while Joe Rogan sits back and enjoys the ride. And here's why the internet is absolutely losing it over this potential matchup. Kamala Harris sitting down with Joe Rogan, it's like watching your high school principal try to hang out with skateboarders. It's the weirdest mix of worlds we've seen in a long time. Kamala Harris, the well-polished politician, trying to navigate the unpredictable waters of Joe Rogan's free-flowing podcast style. People are already laughing about how awkward this could get. The moment Joe Rogan casually shifts the conversation from climate policy to Bigfoot sightings, internet gold. Let's be honest, whether or not Kamala Harris actually goes on the Joe Rogan Experience, the very idea is meme-worthy. The internet thrives on these kinds of unlikely pairings. It's like when Elon Musk smoked weed on Rogan's show, except now we have Kamala Harris fielding questions about UFOs while trying to push her political platform. The disconnect is what makes this hilarious. But is this a smart move for Kamala Harris? Absolutely. She has nothing to lose and everything to gain. The Joe Rogan Experience offers a massive platform, and even if Joe Rogan's core audience doesn't suddenly become Kamala Harris superfans, the exposure alone is worth its weight in gold. Traditional media can't touch what Joe Rogan can offer, an unscripted, genuine conversation that reaches millions of people who probably haven't been paying much attention to Kamala Harris otherwise. And while the internet keeps laughing, Kamala Harris might just walk away with the last laugh. Even if she never makes it onto the Joe Rogan Experience, the buzz alone is giving her campaign a huge visibility boost. So what do you think? Should Kamala Harris face Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience, or is this all just a PR stunt? Drop a comment, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for more wild election updates.